Hi, Rob. Welcome to Industry Insights with G2. I'm Tanushree. I work as an editorial content specialist at G2, and this segment right here is called Industry Insights, where we try and get the industry leaders and get their thoughts on some of the trending topics that our audience, especially marketers, would get a lot of help with. And today we are here to talk to you about everything about Reddit, the Insights Report, AI, and a lot of good stuff.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be
Thank you
here.
so much for doing this. So, coming on my first question, we all know about Reddit and the hype behind it. And Reddit users usually share their thoughts across hundreds and thousands of communities. So, what's the most surprising insight that your team has uncovered about human behavior and that traditional market researchers might have missed?
Happy to answer it. So the insights that we find can be as wide-ranging as big new movements. For instance, veganism started on Reddit well before the mainstream Western media picked up on it as a movement. But one of the ones that I find more interesting are the smaller movements, the little microcultures that brands can really latch onto and find a way to connect in a different way. One example of that is we call it Wash Day, but a car brand came to us and they said, hey, we're launching a new truck. We would love to launch it in a new, interesting, more culturally relevant way. Can you give us an insight on how people are talking about or thinking about trucks? And we went into the numerous subreddits that were about new cars, new trucks, the typical subreddits you'd find. And we kept finding this interesting phrase called wash day. And it was usually a picture of someone proudly standing next to their car or truck, smiling real big as they had their brand new kind of washed car. And what we found, the human insight behind that, which was super fascinating, is they were not celebrating necessarily the adventure they had. There wasn't a whole bunch of pictures of outdoor, you see the typical car commercial, the truck going through the mud and the river and everything's splashing, everything's dirty and everyone's excited. That isn't what they were celebrating. What they were actually celebrating is when it was nice and clean and returned to new, and they were almost anticipating the next adventure. There was a sense of pride. There was a sense of personal connection that seemed to go well beyond just the purchase of a car or truck. And it's those sorts of microcultures, those sorts of little magic moments that I think turn the paradigm that we find in marketing kind of on its head and give fresh life to it. I think a pretty old idea.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And it's quite surprising to me as well, because you would not think about it in a usual situation, I guess. Now, I want to know, how has your approach towards data collection and audience insights evolved after you have joined your company?
It's a great question. One of the things I love about Reddit, and one of the reasons I joined Reddit, is our dedication to privacy, to protecting personal information. We don't collect a lot of PII, and we certainly don't use that in the same way that other companies do. And I think it's a critical part of why Reddit is different. What that's meant, though, is that we've had to change how we provide insights to advertisers. And so we talk a lot about contextual advertising, the fact that you can understand from the context of the conversations where your ad might be relevant and who you might be talking to. It's a leaned in audience. They're raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in this topic, therefore the ad makes more sense. That has been incredibly labor intensive up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago. With the leap in AI, the advancement of LLMs, our ability at scale to allow AI to crawl millions and millions and millions of posts and comments in near real time, and then illuminate thematic clusters that can be those contextual hooks for advertisers, almost like a contextual segmentation model. That's the way we've thought about our insight and data gathering. What we've had to add to that then is a layer of engagement on top of it. One of the things that I've just been passionate about my entire career in this space is I believe mentions have always been at best a vanity metric, that people focus on, well, how often did someone say my name, which is incredibly underselling the importance of the context around the conversation around your brand. How many people viewed it? How many people upvoted or downvoted it? Are they agreeing or disagreeing with the point of view around that people are making around your brand? That's where the power of LLMs combined with the power of our metadata and our engagement data have illuminated brand new insights that we never would have found in prior years.
I'm surprised because you mentioned that Reddit does not collect a lot of personal information, whereas I see in today's times a lot of companies do, because it's kind of the war of data. So you have to, but it's a good change I think.
I mean, the industry is moving that way regardless with GDPR and signal loss across the board. It's always been one of our values. And so it's one of those things where we've been building what we've been building. And I think the arc of culture is going to turn towards where we are, but we've been prepared for that moment, which has really been fortuitous for us.
I think keeping on the same theme, Reddit has historically maintained a different advertising approach from the usual that we see for most of the brands that do, and emphasizing community driven formats like Ask Me Anything, AMAs, targeted engagement in special interest subreddits, etc. How has your marketing strategy evolved with preserving Reddit's community first ethos? I want you to talk about something, maybe something new that you discovered or something that you implemented and it came out as a success.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, my advice to every advertiser when they come on Reddit is to think about how they're adding value to the community first and foremost. Many advertisers approach social listening and they use this word like community management. I think that is a complete wrong ethos of how to think about certainly the communities on Reddit, where you can't manage that community. The community is a group of peers, a group of equals. They all contribute. They all have the opportunity to up or downvote your content. And I think it's a similar sort of mindset for advertisers. So there's a way to do it through paid engagement, and there's a way to do it through organic engagement. So I'll talk about the paid first, and then quickly on the organic. So on the paid side, you mentioned Ask Me Anything. I also think contextual keyword advertising is fantastic, where you can place your advertisement directly in the comment flow of a post. So you know the context around it. You know exactly what the need state is or what the problem is that the consumer is trying to address, and you can match your value proposition to that. We find that those ads, people are coming with an open mind. They're coming in an information-seeking mindset. And so when they see an ad in that space, they're actually more likely to remember what you're saying. They're looking for information, you're providing it. On an organic side, I think that's the opportunity through our new product, Reddit Pro, to understand what conversations should your brand be a part of. How do you find those conversations where people need the information you have? And it may not actually be directly related to your industry. It could be that your brand is helping enable the passions of a broader world. I always say, be a fan of the things your customers are fans of. Go out there and engage with them and excite them and just continually add value. That's a really easy way to increase brand love and get people to talk about you in a positive light.
Talking about customer engagement, algorithm is a big topic today, and many platforms are moving towards algorithm curated content and away from the usual chronological feeds. Yet Reddit has maintained much of its traditional structure from what we can see. What does Reddit understand about online communities that other platforms might be overlooking?
Boy, I feel like the theme of this interview is how Reddit has we've kept our soul or our point of view for so long, and now it seems like culture's kind of caught up. So what's beautiful about Reddit content is every piece of content on Reddit starts from zero. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've posted in the past. It is judged solely on the merits of that post or comment. And what that means is that the community has the opportunity to select what they believe to be the most interesting, the most engaging, the most helpful, funny, humorous, whatever it is, right? We don't need an algorithm to manipulate that because the humans in the space are the ones engaging and voting and allowing it to go up or down. I think also because Reddit exists in this world of subreddits, these small, almost like little cities, and they have their own government or their own set of rules or their own set of like what you can and can't do. If you post on r/cats and you post a picture of a dog, it's not allowed. It's removed, right? We don't need algorithms to find the good bits and pull it up because it's all organized. It's all categorized by the subreddits, and then the community themselves decide what they like or what they don't like. I think that's just a special feature of how Reddit works. And it's meant that we don't need to rely on algorithms to promote content. We certainly can use algorithms to help discovery, and there are numerous features within Reddit that allow you to discover when you want to be surprised or find something new that exists. But when you want to stay within your subreddit or within the communities you love, great. Let's let the humans decide what's best to look at.
Actually, that is what I'm trying to understand, because we're seeing so much AI generated content and so much hype around it. And yet Reddit, we see, as from an audience point of view, we see it following the traditional methods, which are still working for them. So that is the whole concept. Like, we're all here trying to find out that what does Reddit do that's actually working out for them and maybe others are missing out on. And that leads me to my next question. With the rise of AI generated content, how is Reddit planning to maintain the authenticity of its communities, of its audience, as it becomes more difficult to distinguish between human and AI generated content?
It is a great question, something we think quite a lot about. I'll answer it in the today, and then I'll kind of give it a lens for tomorrow. So in today's world, what we find is that individual people are not always great at spotting AI, but a group of individuals, a community of individuals are actually pretty good. They build on one another, they point things out, and then they see it. And then because of the upvote downvote feature, they have the ability to suppress it. I think one thing that's nice, again, about the fact that Reddit is organized by these subreddits is there's less incentive for an AI to, let's say, try to drive viral content across the board on Reddit, because it's difficult to do. You would have to do it one subreddit at a time. It's incredibly hard to do. But more importantly, I think it's interesting to think about AI not in this black and white, yes or no, good or bad. There are actually subreddits that love AI and they want to understand AI content. They want to see like AI generated photos and videos and things like that. It's fun. It's exciting. The point is, are they transparent? And that's where we call them flares, but you're able to, with a given post in a subreddit, actually designate this is an AI generated thing. And if the rules of that subreddit allow, it's okay to do. As we think more longer term, we also want to think about how there's the difference between AI from outside that is being used to kind of flood the community with content that isn't wanted. And then there's AI that can help create content that's actually quite useful. One of my favorite subreddits is r/what bug is this? And it literally is what you think, where you show a picture of a bug and people are like, oh, that's what that is. My daughter loves it. A 4-year-old daughter, she thinks it's the greatest thing on earth, right? But what's interesting about that subreddit is there's a rule that when you post a picture, you have to post the location, because it's the only way people can know what bug it might be. And people forget that rule all the time. They always post and then, the moderator either has to take it down or it's like this awkward exchange. That is a terrific use of AI, where AI could read a post ahead of time and say, hey, you forgot to post the location. Or if it's a different, subreddit, it's like, hey, you forgot to source that article correctly. These communities have guidelines, they have a culture, and AI can help just make sure that, especially if you're newer to that subreddit or maybe you don't engage with it very much, that you follow, the norms of that subreddit and that you have a successful experience. So we don't quite see it as black and white as, AI is helpful or AI is evil. We think there's the appropriate use of it. It's really about transparency, and it's about how are we adding value. If this is adding value, if the community is finding it useful and engaging and exciting, that's our bar, and we're going to let humans decide that.
That's pretty interesting because it's a live example of the community and the power of community and how you are building it. That brings me to my last question. What marketing metrics do you believe that are undervalued in the UGC industry and that Reddit pays particular attention to? And if you can differentiate between the two.
Well, I mentioned it earlier. I've been on a war against mentions my entire life. I think it's the worst metric to use. The one we've been using and leaning on very heavily is view data, and particularly when view data is layered on with additional metadata. And I'll talk a little bit about how we see that. The way we think about views is, how do we look over the lifetime of a post or comment? One of the interesting things about Reddit content is, because it's so heavily indexed on search engines or LLMs, what we find is that many posts and comments actually get traffic well past the original date that it was posted. So if you were to look at an average post on some of the other platforms, you'd see a massive spike and then no one ever goes back to it again. On Reddit, over 50% of the view volume we see comes after a week, a month, a year. We have some posts that have gotten views every single day for the past 3 years. Usually they're product posts. And what that means is that these are information heavy posts that is driving view volume because it is so helpful, because people are actively seeking out the information that exists in those posts. In that sense, it almost acts more like a Wikipedia article, where it's a catalog or a historical reference of information that's needed, that's necessary. And I think that's a metric that I've encouraged my partners to use quite a bit, is let's not so much focus on, please don't do mentions, but also even views in the immediate term. Let's look at that long tail. Let's look what happens after a week, after a month, after a year, because that's telling you that there's something in that post that people continually go back to. They can continually find value in. And if we can imagine if you're a product company and we can assemble all those posts that have this historical kind of long tail, and we could create thematic clusters with that, now we can derive some really interesting insight. And what we're laying on to that now, which we don't have yet, but which we're working towards, is now imagine if I can give you almost a time spent per post view. So now I can see, wow, this person didn't just view this for 3 seconds and move on, but this person came to it a month later and then spent 10 minutes reading every post and comment. There's something there. There's something really powerful there. So we're almost creating like this hierarchy of views where you have this was casually viewed in the moment, this was viewed over time, and this was, call it, obsessed over, where it is the most important, most impactful, the most studied of all the posts and comments. And we want to put different weights on all of those. So that's the advice I've been giving to partners, and that's how we've been working with folks.
That seems to be working for you, and that's, I think, a good advice. Now, before we let you go, I want you to share if you had any kind of piece of advice for the budding marketers out there, what they should be looking out for, anything they should be preparing for, anything.
One thing we're talking a lot about is the change in the purchase journey. I've long said that I believe we're now in a constant state of consideration where we literally can't turn off the advertising that's coming to us. So we are constantly being bombarded. And I think advertisers are right now obsessed with awareness or breakthrough, trying to cut through that clutter, and then performance at the bottom of the funnel. I've been encouraging folks to really think hard about consideration and validation. We're seeing incredible stats that show that 91% of people who discover a product on another platform are passing through Reddit to validate the claims that they're finding on those platforms. That there's an increased, or I should say a decreased trust in the information sources they're receiving, and an increased value in understanding the opinion of a community. And yet we find that advertising spend hasn't correlated with that change in behavior. And so there's an arbitrage opportunity. There's an opportunity now, if you're a smart advertiser, to start focusing on your consideration, your validation, your middle funnel advertising messaging, so that you can essentially sway the people who are going to influence the people who pass through later. We see someone will discover a product somewhere else. They'll come and they'll ask Redditors for advice. And 78% of them follow that advice that a Redditor say. So my question to advertisers is, what do you want those Redditors to say? Are they going to support your value proposition? Are they going to have on the tip of the tongue why your brand is or product is better than someone else's or not? Or, that's your opportunity. That to me is the overlooked strategy that I think will have dramatic effects on your performance marketing and then your full funnel performance as well.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty great advice and timely advice. That brings me to the end of interview. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob, for doing this. I think today we have talked about a lot of interesting things, and our audience would get some amazing insights from this interview.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And don't be straight here. If I can ever help anyone out there, please reach out. I'm happy to help you guys.